Welcome, Merav. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you guys? And thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure and an honor being here.
Amazing, 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 amazing. And I want to say hello. It's a pleasure and honor to have you here, especially in this time. And we will talk a lot about that. We are here in Lead 111, Leaders and Change Makers class at Stanford University, and we are also broadcasting it live on Clubhouse with the Leadership Reinvented Club on Clubhouse. And I will let Aneel say a few words about the class. Aneel is professor with me at Stanford and my collaborator here, and the head of Health and Human Performance, the director of Health and Human Performance at Stanford University. And such a delight to have you here, Aneel, as well.
So first of all, thank you, Merav. Wonderful to have you, and Yasmin as well. This Luminaries and Changemakers lecture series and course is really about examining across generations, across sectors, and across the political spectrum, ways of leading and making change for flourishing for all humans everywhere. And we have the great honor of hosting folks like yourself who are truly luminaries globally. We've had business leaders, healthcare leaders, scientists, politicians, artists. And this common thread is we want to understand from you, who are you and what do you stand for as a leader? What's been your journey? How did you get to where you came from and where you are now? And how would you give sort of advice to the upcoming next generation of leaders? We have an amazing group of folks on the webinar and on Clubhouse. We have several CEO networks, social innovation networks represented, and we have students who are becoming and stepping into their own leadership journey and who will be the change makers of tomorrow. And so the ethos for this is a ranging conversation based in this idea of change making from the inside out and learning from the outside in. So again, thank you and welcome. We're honored to have you, and I'll hand it back to you, Ron, to begin the conversation.
Thank you so much, Aneel. And for those of you who have just joined us, we're delighted to have here with us in Lead 111 at Stanford University and in Leadership Reinvented on Clubhouse, Merav Michaeli, the leader of the Labor Party in Israel. Merav has been a leader for quite a while. She is in the past was a journalist, well-known activist, real change maker, and in so many ways a feminist. Somebody who is carrying the torch for many years in some very important agenda that she's leading, and as of recent really was able to take the Labor Party in Israel from the brink of the demise to really turn it around and really have big success in the elections in Israel, and how important this is, especially in light of what's happening in Israel today. And I let Merav talk a little bit more about her background and about her journey. But before that, I just also want to say welcome to Yasmin Lukatz, who's a good friend and a collaborator with us, here in Lead 111 and in Leadership Reinvented. And Yasmin is also a leader in the startup community, both in Silicon Valley and in Israel. She's leading ICON, which is an organization that supports entrepreneurs from Israel who build global startups and companies and supporting them in Silicon Valley and in Israel. She's a philanthropist, and she's a great person as well. She will join me in interviewing Merav and learning some very important lessons about change making and leadership today. So thank you, Yasmin, for that as well.
And thank you, Ron, for inviting me. It's a real honor to kind of mix two big loves, both Stanford, which I went to and I love, and in Israel, and bringing such an impressive leader as Merav. So looking forward to today. Thanks.
Amazing, amazing. So without further ado, I want to turn to Merav, and before I start, going and talking about the class and about the framework of concentric circles and getting to know you really well, maybe we'll start with just a few words from you, Merav, in this not very easy time in Israel, to say the least.
Well, that is very correct, and it's good of you to let me take a moment to describe to you where we're at. It's Wednesday night, the time here is 10 p.m., and the streets are completely empty, and it's quiet like you would not believe. It's like just this tense quiet because everybody's waiting for Hamas to launch missiles, which last night we had so many of them in Tel Aviv and all around the center of Israel. Now it will sound horrible what I'm going to say now, and that is that we are kind of used to having missiles attack from Gaza on the south of Israel. But the center of Israel and Tel Aviv, and on Monday we had it on Jerusalem, and even the parliament, is something that we're not as used to, and is a breach, yet another breach of the sort of status quo that we used to have with Hamas. It's horrible to even describe it that way, but people were running, we were running from the apartments to shelters or whatever safe rooms that we have in our apartments or outside the apartments over and over and over again. It was very, very frightening. We have a few dead civilians and many casualties. And Hamas have promised to continue because the IDF is attacking in Gaza, of course, in order to stop this terror attack on Israel. So that's where we're at now, right now. This is part of maybe you'll invite me some other day and we can discuss Israel's situation and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the region and everything else. But for now, I think we'll settle for that. I just needed to let you know that if the sirens do go off, then I will take the phone with me to the staircase. You can meet the neighbors and we can have a chat with them as well on their leadership.
Yeah. So first of all, yeah, sorry to hear that, and it's a reality that for us it's hard to comprehend. I still remember a similar situation in the Gulf War, but that was long time ago when I was in Israel, and and it's as real as it gets, and I hope that the tension eases down as soon as possible. And first of all, wishing you safety and everybody in Israel, and that's the most important thing. And hopefully we can run this interview and keep everybody safe on your side. But so thank you for doing it and still doing it in such a tense time. And it's such an important opportunity to talk about leadership. And I want to start this conversation, Merav, with what we call concentric circles, right? Like we want to start with understanding your leadership style, with understanding you as a leader and change maker, by starting with like a very core question of the why, right? And I'll start with taking you very, very far back into when you just started thinking about your career, started thinking about your life and what you're trying to accomplish, and want to go to the core of what inspired you to lead and make change, and what of it was back then. And we'll go through a journey of starting with the innermost circle and start opening it up to wider and wider circle. But tell us a little bit about the why.
Well, I don't think certainly if we're going back to early life periods, I did not think of myself as a leader. I wasn't thinking about wanting to lead. It was about the what, not about, what you call the why was the what, actually. Mm-hmm. It's, I think it's encountering wrongs that I wanted to make right. And so I just acted on it. And I didn't think much. I didn't say to myself, like, is it worth my while? Should I lead? How should I lead? Whatever. I just did what I felt was right to do and what I wanted to do. And I think, generally speaking, as we go along, and I think it'll come up again in the next questions, I think one of the main things that I tell, especially women, obviously, but men too. And I think for me is one of the sort of lights that I try to follow in my life is that I try to figure out what it is that I want, and I try to pursue it. And now for women, it is especially difficult to want something. Desire is an active force that is attributed to men mostly and not to women. Women are allowed, of course, to want shopping and to want children and to want to get married. That's about what we're allowed to want. If you want to achieve more than that, then it's not considered feminine enough usually. And so it's one of the things that, you know, when you're too ambitious, you usually get beaten on the head and your brownies are being taken away from you. So I think I just, again, and these are things that I can say in retrospect, in real time, certainly as a young girl or a teenage or a young woman, I did not think about it that way. I just really tried to stick to the things that I wanted to do, and something that is also very, very important, not to do the things that I did not want to do. And that is sometimes not any less difficult than sticking to what you do want to do. So it was really about wrongs that I came across, either regarding myself or others. And, you know, things such as teachers abusing the power that they had as authorities, which I never accepted. And of course, you know, the rest of the teachers or the headmaster or your parents, they do not subscribe to your point of view. They think that as the authority they are also obligated to stand by the other authority. And you find yourself fighting against, it doesn't matter again if it was about me or other students. Or when I was in, I think, the 7th grade already, at the time they used to distribute us to, the boys went to study electronics and the girls would have a class of homemaking. And I would be like, I'm not going to study homemaking. And you realize that already at this age, you're being put on a trailer that is taking you either to a life course of professionality in which you can make money and have profession and get better and have status in, or a course that leads you to a work that nobody recognizes its financial value to this day, amazingly enough, and nobody recognizes its professionality, and yet you are expected to do it as a second nature of yours. Yep. So I refused to join that class, and I insisted on joining the boys. I mean, at the time, I did not think that I need to demand to divide the class into two and that everybody had to study everything. That came later on. So I can give you many, many examples such as this. And of course, I had, my first career was as a scout, as a counselor in the Scouts. By the way, my first encounter with the US was as a part of the Scouts delegation at the age of 16 and a half. I spent 3 months in West Palm Beach. Isn't that classic? So, and then in the Army, when I insisted on not being a secretary that will be told what to do and to make coffee because I knew it will not end well, not for me and not for the Army. And then and then I was accepted, thankfully. That was a mixture of a lot of stubbornness and good fortune. I was accepted to the IDF radio station, which was the place where I started my career on the media. And again, I insisted on doing the shows on the programs that I wanted to do and not doing those that I didn't want. And there were times, and certainly there were times, I will get back to that in a minute, where it was about the living that I could not make because they were willing to only offer me things that I didn't want to do. And I have found myself out of television for 3 years at some point because I wouldn't do the things that they wanted me to do. And then at some point, and I think this is a key point in my career, which if you want to get to later, and I will stop now, and you will continue with questions, and then we'll get to whatever.
No, it's great. You're covering them one after the other. I don't even need to ask. It's awesome. No, it's great. No, I really wanted to talk about the journey, and you started the journey, and that's great because it's like, it's starting from the core motivation, right? Like with where it starts with the innermost circle and what drove you, to start doing what you're doing and to start rebelling against, like certain things that didn't seem right to you at that point, or didn't seem just to you at that point. And then going to, I want to take some of these twists and turns a little bit, right? Some of these stories, within your journey, right? We're talking about becoming a leader and change maker, right? And I want to touch into personally formative experiences, like all kind of turning points, right? Sparks of inspiration, flashes of insights, things that are really like real things that happen that, make things tick or make things turn, that shaped who you are today as a leader and a change maker. So maybe you can share with us some of these turning points.
So I think a lot of it is pushbacks. I mean, you want to do something and everybody tells you that you can't, and they keep telling you that you can't. And so there's no reason. I mean, and you look, but and you tell them, but why not? I mean, it's easy and it's possible and it's nice and it's cool and and it would work and why not actually? And still they tell you no, and then you insist. And so I think a lot of the motivation comes from people telling you no, for me at least. I know I don't really take no's good. I don't take it well. And so one of the things that I'm known for in Israel as a feminist and in general is the way that I speak Hebrew. Hebrew is a hyper genderized language. You cannot say I am walking or we are walking without specifying the gender. It's not a neutral walk. It's either I female walk or I male walk. And the plural in Israel is always male. We are male walking, they are male thinking, you are male wanting, okay? And at some point in my life, I started speaking in the female plural form. And now, I mean, in the beginning, until I got myself used to it, because it's something that is so embedded in you since, I mean, Yasmin can testify for it, I think, and you want to. It's something that is a second nature. So it was very difficult to get used to it. But when I did, and in the beginning, really, I only spoke, it was a reaction of mine to the fact that when you stand in front of the cash machine, it knows better than me what my bank account situation is. It can take away my credit card if it so wishes, but it will still tell me, please, you male, take out your card. And I was so, I mean, and it was going on for so many years. And you hear it whenever you call someone and you're waiting on the line, or when an advertisement says something to you and it speaks to you as not only in general plural male, but if they want to say something in general, like say, when you walk, it'll be when you male walk, or why don't you male by? Right. So it was a reaction of mine. And it's one of those things that I can only, when I look back, I started speaking like that 20 years ago. In the beginning, people I cannot describe how horrible the reactions to me were, as if it's such a bad joke and it's like so tiresome and so like a nudge. And I don't know how I kept it. I have no idea. I mean, often I think that people are underestimating less consciousness than is needed. I mean, being unconscious is sometimes very helpful. And so, but what I started saying is that I kept saying to people, let's change this. Like for many years, I would work in a television station, and the operator would speak to you in a mail form, and I would say to the management, why don't we change it so it speaks to everyone? And they would tell me, but this is how it's done. There's no reason why to do it.
Right.
And it was once and twice and third time until I started speaking like that. Now by the way, ever since I went back on television, I started using both. I'm saying we are male wanting and female wanting. And thankfully, after 20 years of doing that and having been really the laughing stock for a good number of years, and again, you guys can testify to this, now it's become so common. It's so common, like it's all over the place. It's rare that someone would turn to an audience and not recognize the two genders. And it's all over the place. So that you can do it. And I think if there's another, like I have many, I think sort of junctions or points like this that I can describe, but maybe the major one is that after I started my media career on the radio, and when I was discharged from the army, I started working on television as well, and I was a celebrity, and I had my own television shows, primetime shows. They did very well. I had a lot of fun, and I was always volunteered to whatever I was asked to volunteer for. And I was known for my feminist views that, as I described to you, went back to, I don't know, the age of 3 or 4 or something, but it was never sort of institutionalized. It was never, I don't know, organized in any way. And then one day the Rape Crisis Center management in Israel came to me. Now, this is 1996. And I have to tell you something, that in Israel, we started the feminist revolution about 25 years, maybe later, after America, because during the 60s and the 70s, we were busy fighting other wars. And the 90s was actually the first decade in Israel in which we did not have a major war going on.
Right.
And they came to me and they said, are you willing to host our annual fundraise? Now, by chance, I was at their previous fundraise, which was held in a slimy, sleazy, dark, marginal, pathetic club in the south, in a bad neighborhood in Tel Aviv. It had very few people. It was very obvious that no one was raising any money there. And I said to them, I'll do whatever you ask me to. Why are you doing this? Why are you perpetuating the image of rape as something that is so taboo and so illegit and so filthy, etc.? And why don't you take it to like the Lincoln Center of Life and, have the really important and rich people that can make a difference be there and make a difference? And I gave this enthusiastic speech, and they were all like, wow, what an amazing idea. How do we do this? I said, I don't know. Don't you have like some charity committee or something? I knew nothing of this. And they said, no one is willing to be identified with rape, with the fight against rape. And I said to them, I didn't get it. I mean, we know the numbers. Every third woman is going through sexual assault. Every first woman is going through sexual harassment, a word that we still did not have in Hebrew, and we still didn't have legislation against that at the time. You are telling me that no one's willing to be identified with fighting this? And they said, no one's willing to be identified with this. Even those who will help us a little bit will only do this incognito. And so I said, okay, let me try. And I put together a list of prominent, famous women whom I thought would have an interest in this. And I was amazed to find out that when I was calling these women up and saying, hi, this is Merav Michaeli, I want to do this thing for the Rape Crisis Centers, they were like on board like crazy, the majority of them. And the brief that I had from the start was to make this something that is not only legit, but is like sexy and prestigious And so, and I got everything anyways. We had this huge campaign that we did. We were the first non-commercial body that used advertising. And we used every resource that we could think of. It was a 6 months amazing experience, which really ended in this very, very glamorous, huge event with the biggest stars of the time, with the most important people in the crowd, in one of the most glamorous places in Tel Aviv. And ever since then, I've been really working with the rape crisis centers. This has been, what, 25 years ago or something. And we have changed Israeli awareness about sexual offenses completely. It's not like we're over with rape yet, but it's a completely different reality. And it has not, it's like Me Too in Israel. Of course, we had Me Too, but it was not the same Me Too that you had in America, because in America, after the 60s and the 70s revolution, you had like 20 something years of stillness, which very little happened. And then it sort of blew up like, wow. While in Israel, we managed to keep it on the agenda. We have a former president that was jailed for sexual assault. We have a former Minister of Justice, a former Minister of Defense, like many celebrities who were convicted for sexual offenses. And so I know I have already a lot of experience in life that you can derive change.
Amazing.
Really, it's like, it's so possible.
So I just want to, sorry for interrupting. I'm inspired, so I let you continue going. I just want to make sure that we're aware of time and covering all the topics that we wanted to cover, but that's what's super inspiring, Merav. I really appreciate you for that. Just like before we go to Yasmin, that we'll cover with you the leadership and change-making part of this conversation that I'm eager to get to, just like in a couple of sentences, and then we'll go to Yasmin. What did you learn? Right, like just like really if you can summarize from this journey from non-awareness to something that was difficult to push, putting it up the hill and conquering it against all odds, what are the couple of quick lessons that you can tell us about, these experiences quickly so we can move forward?
Go to therapy. Plenty of therapy is good. Because everyone has their own inner glass ceilings. And challenges are good, but you have to have, there's constantly more of yourself that you can find and elaborate, so you can use and get better at being yourself and handling the things that are coming. It's not even necessarily pushbacks. Sometimes it's the things that you succeed in doing and you're not necessarily well equipped in order to deal with it, because sometimes success can be overwhelming. And a lot of things that you think you're aware of you are not necessarily aware of. And so listen to everyone. But do what you think at the end is the things that you, as I said, do what you want to do, but listen to people, genuinely listen to people. Try to get rid of fear. I know it's an easy thing to say and more complicated thing to do, but yes, fear is a very, very bad guide in life.
Yep.
Well, and maybe two more things. One is, do not wait to get to a position or a point in life or a place in order to do what you want to do. It is the change that you want to achieve or to make does not depend on where you are. We are agents of change no matter where we are. We are able to do it as brothers, as sisters, as parents, as children, as citizens on the streets, as consumers, as managers, as whatever. It doesn't matter where you are. You can always derive change. And actually, you are affecting reality also when you choose not to do anything. Because when you choose to avoid whatever you think needs to be done, but seems too difficult or too pricey or whatever, you affect reality in the way that you accept it, and you are a part of maintaining something that you think is wrong and that should be different. And so it remains there for others.
Yep.
Whatever obstacle it is or whatever wrong it is, others will come across it because you chose not to do something about it.
Absolutely. So
and when you do, I'm just offering two new ways to look at it. Not only because it's the human thing is to look at the price that we're paying, and this is also something that we talk about a lot, the price that we're paying. But think of the price that we're paying when you don't do anything about what you want to do, and this is a big price usually. And the other thing is, try to imagine the gain that there is on the other side, and this one is usually really huge.
Yep. Amazing. So it's never too early to start moving change. Not doing anything is actually doing something, right? So and really love the message of listening, right? Like you appear to be somebody that has really strong opinions on things, which is awesome, but like you didn't skip the lesson of attentively listening. You said it several times, and I wanted to emphasize this for the student and for the for everybody who's listening to us on Clubhouse. It's never too early to do change. Not doing anything is actually doing something and making a statement, and listening deeply is so important. So thank you for these lessons. And I want to turn to Yasmin. Yasmin Lucas right now is with us. Delighted to have you, Yasmin, to take the conversation to the next very important thing that is the topic of this class, which is change making. The notion of really the aspect of leadership that we focused on from the early days of the pandemic, the work that Aneel and I did on sapient leadership, when we had this amazing experience last year of seeing the entire world changing in ways that were just unbelievable, very quickly, and every single aspect of our life changed. Things changed in an exponential way, right? Like things changing at an accelerating rate, and affected every single aspect of our lives. And we called it three-dimensional change, 3D change, and created a new framework for leadership that's called sapient leadership. And we're bringing you today to the class as a sapient leader, and excited to learn the lessons from you. And Yasmin will talk about leading in times of unprecedented challenges, which in Israel, talking about what we had here in the pandemic is amplified even more, with the situation in Israel. So I'll turn it to Yasmin. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Ron. I think actually I also heard Merav talk about that, you can lead from any position. You can lead from the back seat, you can lead from the driver's seat, you can lead from next. And it really brought me to think about the past year for you, Merav, which has been like a tremendous change, you've been for the past 8 years, you've been a member of the Labor Party, one of the most active legislators, but always sitting in the opposition. And then through a process, you actually forced the party to conduct primaries according to its constitution, was elected to lead the party, which was an amazing change. You're the only female who's leading a party in the state of Israel, and you're the only one with the totally egalitarian list. So this is, and now you're actually part of negotiating a role in the government, in the upcoming government, and we don't know where that's going to be, but part of that. So, thinking about a year back and a year now, and everything you told us about the formative years and how you became who you are, and I'm curious, how do you think everything you learned in the past kind of impacted this change? How did it help you navigate through the change? Which of all the recommendations that you gave us were the guiding lights for you?
Oh, what you didn't mention, Yasmin, was that in the last year, I've been in the Knesset for 8 years. Yes, I was on the opposition, but together with the party. But in the last year, what happened was that we were only three. Labor has shrunk to only 3 mandates, 3 members in the Knesset.
Out of 44, I mean, for those who don't know, Labor was the leading party for many years in this country, the biggest party.
Yeah, well, that was long ago, unfortunately. But anyways, the biggest promise that my chair at the previous chair of Labor made during 3 rounds of elections was not to join Netanyahu in the government. And then in the 3rd round, 2 of them joined Netanyahu, despite the promises and despite the commitment. And I did not. So I was left as a one member opposition alone from my party in the opposition, while them two are in the government. So it's like, getting literally in the first few days, getting into the assembly, it was like passing next to other factions in parliament who are sitting together, and you're passing by them and you're alone. It's like a really awkward situation to be in, and you really have to find your way, because it also, of course, has many limitations when you're all alone and you don't have the same positions and the same possibilities. But it freed me completely in a way that allowed me to speak my mind without having to take into consideration what the chair of the party says and what the party line is. And I could really express what I really think, as you said, very strong opinions, yes, and just really be myself in a way that I realized I haven't been in a long time. And that came across because when you are genuine, and that reminded me, I think it reminded me how powerful it is that when people see that you are really yourself, that what you say is what you mean and the way you say it. And it was like a whole new opportunity for me I didn't think about it as an opportunity. I just really stuck to what I believed and to what I thought was right to do. I really think that joining Netanyahu is just like, there's no way that one can do it. It's so harmful, so dangerous, so terrible for Israel. So again, it's yet another proof that when you stick to what you really believe and what you really want to do, it pays off amazingly. And Yasmin also didn't mention one other thing, and that is that it's not only that Labor shrunk and was and I was in the opposition, but that in all the recent in the polls for 6 months, it not only did it not pass the threshold, but it was almost zero. Everyone was sure that it's going to be erased completely, and everybody were already eulogizing the party, saying, oh, how the party which started the state of Israel is going to disappear, and it's gone, and it's not going to run in the next elections. And not only did we run, but as Yasmin said, we have the first ever egalitarian list, and we have 7 mandates. It's not enough yet to go back to being the ruling party of the center-left camp, which I am planning on doing. And this is now, my work is cut out for me to really make this happen, but it's considered to be a miracle, and everybody's talking about the resurrection and everything. So, and the thing was that I was alone at that, and it was like really doing it from scratch, and to remember that. And when I told you before that sometimes you look at things in retrospect, and I not really figuring out how I did this. So this is also a good example for this, because for almost a year, everybody kept saying to me, it will not work. Why do you insist on Labor? It's dead. It's not revivable. Why do you go somewhere else? You can find a new home. There are so many options. Go there, do this. And sometimes I would kind of say to myself, everybody's saying you're drunk, go put your head under the faucet, but I really believed in it. So, and it worked. So yes, this is what it is.
So being genuine, being yourself. I'm thinking about all my daughter's coffee mugs, like be yourself, everyone else is taken, be the change you want to see. All of that. No,
Oh
but it's
my
true.
God.
No,
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 but it's true.
but
Be
it
the
is.
change you want to see, by the way, is one of the most, I think, one of the most complicated things to implement. Because what we usually do is we say the things that we want to happen. It's like when you want everybody to be quiet and you keep saying, be quiet, instead of just being quiet. Yeah.
You know, actually, since I met Ron, I think it's 2013, his email signature under his name, it always says, be the change you want to see. This is how I met the sentence. But let me ask you another question. I want to talk for a second about moral trade-offs. And I didn't unmute here. Sorry. So I want to ask you about moral trade-offs. Now we are in a situation when you're negotiating a place in the new government, which is going to have a lot of broad, like an amazing breadth of opinions from Meretz on the far left, Sal and Bennett on the far right. You're going to have to make moral trade-offs, and to affect change, it seems like you always have to make moral trade-offs. How do you think about this? What's your approach? Are there things that I'm willing to do? I mean, you spoke about not being willing to go into the Netanyahu party government with your colleagues. That was when you consider the moral trade-off and you took a different approach than the other members of your party. But how do you look at it now? How are you going to balance those things?
First of all, I just remember that we have moral traits. You don't have to be in politics or in leadership or anywhere in order to have moral trades-off. Every morning when you get up, you have to make a compromise between everything that you want to do and whatever is possible or achievable so.
But these are not always moral trade-offs. These are like just trade-offs. There's always trade-offs about everything. Here you're balancing two values that you care. One, you want to be, you want the change group to be in control. You want the change group to be in control, and the other one is, whatever values you're trying to promote, your position. And how do you do both?
First of all, realizing that removing Netanyahu from power is as non-sufficient as it is a mandatory requirement in order to start rehabilitating Israel and start putting it back on a path to something that is not Trumpism. Okay, after having lived under Donald Trump for 4 years, just imagine living under this for, I don't know, what is it, 12 and a half years in a row or something like that? Just imagine. So removing Netanyahu is worth paying a price for that. Now, having said that, it's got to be different enough. If it's the same, then so what I mean is that I'm not going to do it at any cost. For instance, the right-wing parties are demanding to have exclusive control over the committee to appoint judges. That is, for me, for instance, something that is a non-starter. This is like a too high a price to pay. But given that everybody understands that they're not going to get, the right is not, it's not going to be a right-wing government, it's not going to be a left-wing government. Everybody's going to do, like you say, a moral trade-off. Then, and it depends on whether there's enough goodwill to reach some kind of, it's a very narrow mainstream that we can agree on. It may be very narrow, but there is such a, sort of middle road that we can all live with. If we can get there, then yes, it's worth the trade-off. If we cannot, then it's not going to be made possible anyways. Right. But again, realizing that there is a goal, which is removing Netanyahu, that is, it's really right now more important than a lot of other things. And realizing also, and that is also important to remember, the things that I believe in. For instance, we were discussing the Palestinian-Israeli conflict at the beginning of the session. I am a strong believer in a a solution for this conflict that is really, it's a mandatory requirement for Israel to really last, to exist, for the Zionist vision to continue existing. It's something that is completely unachievable in such a government if should be formed. But at the same time, it's not something that's going to happen with Netanyahu. It's not something that's going to happen right now anyway. It's not like I can choose between a center-left government, which I hope to head in not too long, or between this government that you have described. No, it's between the choices that I do have, it's a fair choice.
Excellent. So thank you, Merav. I really appreciate that. And really like a tough situation to be in, and like being pragmatic at a time, when there are so many balancing needs to, and you have your own, vision, some other visions, and how do you bring some of these visions together in a way that works to actually accomplish something bigger for everyone. It will be fascinating to watch, and I'm sure that there's a lot going on there. And I really appreciate for you sharing with us some of the the kind of deliberations on the way to to getting what's really important, what's it's okay to compromise on, what's not okay to compromise on. It's really fascinating from a leadership perspective. We would continue that for hours with you, Merav, and we would, because it's fascinating. I love this conversation. There's so much more to unpack in each and every one of these questions, and I'm fascinated by it. I just want to give two things. I want to give an opportunity to the students in particular, but also to some people here, to ask some questions for you, because there's so many people. My messages are just blowing in every single aspect. People are just asking lots and lots of questions, and I want to make sure that we have an opportunity to do that. And I also want to go back, if you're okay with that, to talk about your possibility for the future, right? Like what are these times teach you, about that, thinking about the future. But let's start with some questions and answers. Aneel, if you're with us, love to get some of the questions and answers that you got. And please feel free to DM Aneel on LinkedIn if you have additional questions. We'd love to take some of these to Merav.
Well, we certainly have more questions than we can ask. This is a stimulating conversation, a lot of passion and interest here. So I'm gonna give a couple of questions that I think are in clusters. So one of our students, Santiago Bustamante, is asking, this character side in the time of crisis. What are the key elements of one's character or one's toolkit as a leader and change maker that you must have in these times of crisis to motivate people and to lead and to set a vision and to make it through these tough times? And I think that has shades of a number of questions people are asking. And then I'll connect that to another question coming from Perry Carson, who's a Distinguished Career Institute fellow here at Stanford formerly. And, he says, speaking as a Jew and a Zionist, isn't it enough already to this tough times? And I think it's connected to what Santiago's asking as a leader of the Labor Party, which has such an illustrious history as the founders of the state and advocates of peace, and Perez and Rabin. How would you lead Israel through these tough times and lead the Israelis and Palestinians out of the continuous morass to prosperity and tranquility? I think these are sort of connected. So, please.
Wow, very good questions. And I hope to be able to answer well. I don't know how, but I don't know to answer about character. I know that during the last few months with this amazing journey that I'm in with insisting on labor and then insisting on primaries and then achieving primaries, we went all the way up to the Supreme Court in order to get it. And then the campaign, the general campaign. And now I know that my stamina muscle was working overtime, because too often things are like, it's like so much uncertainty and so many sometimes obstacles, and sometimes things that are unknown, and sometimes things that are not dependent, that you can't do anything about, and you have to just wait and have the patience for. So stamina is something that to work on. And as I said, therapy is always good. And I think when I think the most important thing, maybe, you know, when I said sticking to what you want, I can also say it, have a vision, know what it is that you want. I think the most important thing, and that is something that I always tell to women in politics, there are a lot of sort of, you know, women politics things. What is the most important thing is, and that goes back to what you started with, and that is the why. What is it that you need it, that you want it for? If you want it in order to be famous or to have power, or I don't know what, I don't know, I do not relate to this at all. I want to be able to form the feminist state. I want to be able to have peace. I want to work for equality between people. So this is why it's worth, for me, this is what's worth paying all those prices for. And there are, of course, prices on the way to pay. By the way, not only for yourself, but often to the people close to you. And that is something that's important to remember as well. Because I can tell you that in politics, once you become a politician, the close people to you will suffer a major, how shall I say, harat naim, their conditions will be much worse. You are preoccupied, you are occupied, you are less patient, you are less there. It's very difficult. And you need to acknowledge that. I'm sure that is true for many positions that you will have in life. So again, it's going back to the vision. And my vision for Israel is very clear. I just know that a solution for our conflict with the Palestinian it's, you know, very rarely in life do we have linchpins. Usually there's no linchpin. You have to work on things from all sides all the time. It's complicated, and it's not complicated, but when we reach a solution, and I believe in a solution that will also involve the regional solution, and I know we have many partners for this, but it depends on political will. It depends on a decision. And once we reach and such a solution, it's not something that happens overnight. It's a process. It's a long process. But the process itself can be something so constructive and so benefiting for everyone. I'm a very big believer in ADR, in dispute resolution in different ways. One of my most important legislations that is already working for almost 5 years now has changed the way that divorce in Israel are being handled, and they're being handled through ADR. And it's a huge success. So if I can get divorced couples to agree on things, I can get Israelis and Palestinians to agree on things. And that is what I intend to do, among other things.
So this is, you know, I think fascinating and resonant with a lot of the comments and questions coming in. So let me extend this in a little different direction. One of our friends on Clubhouse, Mikhail, Ronan is asking, I think, a question that represents a cluster of some questions coming in, which is, you know, much of this peacemaking and creating a flourishing future for all is now changing in shape because of social media, because of the ability to do citizen diplomacy, so to speak, human to human. And he's mentioning, you know, platforms like Clubhouse, where you can literally host conversations. And there's been 1,000-person rolling conversations over the last few days about what's happening in Israel, for example. And I think that this cluster of questions is someone who comes from a media background. Do you see a role for new media, for social media, for citizen diplomacy via Clubhouse or other modes that can actually help move the needle? And if so, how might you advise people to utilize these platforms effectively?
Well, one needs to recognize the fact that social media, which started as, I mean, the internet in general and social media specifically, which started as something that seemed like a new democracy or an arena that is freer and more mobile or whatever, is again dependent on money and money. So yes and no. At the end of the day, technology is technology. It can be used for good, it can be misused, it can be abused. And social media is a very good example for both. So yes, we should do our best, as always, to use whatever means we have in order to derive good change rather than abuse the abilities it gives us. That is a challenge and a temptation that we all face constantly. In that sense, social media is not different than any other.
And let me ask one more question here before I hand it over to you, Ron and Yasmin, if you'd like that. I know there's a couple of questions in Hebrew that you may want to handle, as my Hebrew is not so good. But Prashant Yadav, who's one of the Sloan Fellows here at Stanford and members of our Changemaker, our Luminary and Changemaker class, has this following question. And I think it touches to these two, which is, like you, I believe and dream a world of equal opportunities, but our reality is heartbreaking. I come from a developing country. Prashant comes from India, and I see stark gender and caste disparities. Even today, parents even discriminate between how they educate boys versus girls, and there's all these societal fault lines. Do you think this is more about a society mindset? And as a leader, how do you sort of take charge or drive or inspire large-scale reform of societal mindsets? And I think this is applicable in many domains. Do you have a sense of how one goes about doing that as a leader and change maker?
You just do. You just do. It's, as I said before, I was quoting my friend and teacher, Catherine McKinnon, she's the one who enlightened me with this understanding that there's no linchpin. There's no one way in which you can change reality. It's got to do with culture and society, and it has a lot to do with the law. The law really shapes our lives and our personalities much more than we are accountable for, much more than we even imagine. Think about the fact that you actually stand in a red light and drive in a green light because the law says so. It practically really directs your movement in the world. And when the law, for instance, is giving a parenthood leave to the woman, exclusively to the woman, it practically manufactures this institution of a mother versus the institution of a father. And the law can change that. It can change many aspects of our lives. But we have to be willing to do the effort to work for the society that we want to see. Whenever you think that something is too difficult to achieve, look back, look where we are today versus where we've been 50 years ago, 100 years ago. We as women, we only have the vote for 100 years. We are so new to this, and look what we've achieved in over these 100 years. Black men have only have the vote for 150, I think, years. Such profound things have changed. Our democracy, something that we take for granted today, we didn't have that. People did not have the right to vote at all. The beginning of the US, okay? All men were created equal and free. Men meaning white men with property exclusively. So look back and be encouraged. We can achieve so much.
Amazing. And what a great segue. So first of all, I want to thank everybody for their question and their engagement. I wish we had a lot more time. I see like so many questions coming in, in English and in Hebrew and in every language. I think that we should definitely have another conversation with you, Merav. People here love you, and I think that would love to hear more from you. So really appreciate you and the insights and the effort, and I'm glad that you're safe and everything is good and no alarms are sounding in the background, thankfully for now.
Maybe thanks to you, yes. Maybe Hamas is watching, and they don't want to have bad PR in the States, live and all.
Right. So I wanted to let you dream again. I love how you said how do you instigate huge change? We started with you as a dreamer when you were young and thinking about what shaped you in the early days of your career, and we start opening the concentric circles, and we talked about change making, and we got to the outermost circle of making big change in the world, and you said just do it, which was awesome. And I want to take you now to the future. Now dream big, right? You're back into the beginning of your career, but where you are right now, and you have a lot more to go, right? So I want to let you dream big right now, and think about the future, and think about the possibilities and change making, and share with us some of your vision for the future.
You mean what I said so far was not big enough? Wow. Okay, I don't know if I can do bigger than that. Peace, equality, all that. Okay. But that's no, seriously, I have, it's peace, it's equality of opportunities. But I think the most concrete thing that is really the challenge that is in front of me is really being able to build labor back to being a ruling party for the center-left camp in Israel, because Israel has been under, I think what I call it the Netanyahu era ever since 1993 till now. And part of this era is the devastation of the center-left political camp in Israel. And I emphasize political camp because in terms of people's positions, they're not right-wing, but the word left has become a curse in Israel. And so it's really shattered the whole political power in Israel, and the forces are fractured. And this is why we are in such a deep political crisis now. And it's true that I've succeeded in reviving the party and saving it from being erased, but it's only the beginning. And it is not given yet at all. So I need this political tool in order to be able to achieve those big dreams that it's easy for me to talk about, but they need to have a tool through which we can achieve it. And so this is my task now, and I have to, focus on it. Of course, again, just as a tool to achieve the big dreams, which I totally believe are achievable.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Starting with the pragmatic, okay, what do we need to do now to build the foundation to enable us to, peace and equality and all these big things happen? Let's start being practical and pragmatic and create the base for that. And I love the just do it. Just start. No matter where you are, just start. Lots of inspiration, Merav. Yeah, go ahead. You want to say something?
No. I just want to say that just do it. I feel uncomfortable. Somebody already said it,
Yeah. Well, just do it. No saying is one thing. Just do it is a lot bigger than just saying just do it, right? So I think that was amazing. So thank you so much. I want to thank also Aneel Chima, Dr. Aneel Chima was with us on the stage, who's the director of health and human performance at Stanford University, and my collaborator. Aneel, thank you so much for doing this and bringing amazing leaders both to Stanford and to Clubhouse, to our Leadership Reinvented Club. I want to say a big thank you to Yasmin Lukatz, who's one of our collaborators that made this possible and was a wonderful co-teacher here with us together. Yasmin, thank you, and we're looking forward to having you again with us doing more of this thing. That was great. And big flowers and thank you to you, Merav, for all the work that you're doing already for many years, and for taking the time in this super stressful, super tense time in Israel, both politically, but also in the work, the day-to-day work that you're doing. And as the government is forming and all the things that is going around to really help us educate the next generation of leaders. And, we're recording this, we'll share this with you together. That was a delight and an inspiration. And I want to say thank you, Toda Rabba. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure, and anytime.
I want to say, I want to thank you too, Merav, for everything. But I think my big takeaway from everything is that I love the being genuine, because we can disagree on our opinions, but as long as you're genuine, it's okay. We can have a conversation about them. So thank you for being genuine.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for everybody for joining us, both at Stanford University and on Clubhouse. We wish everybody here a great rest of the day, and we wish peace and quiet and a good quiet evening to Israel as well. Our hearts and minds are with you with what's going on there, and I hope this ends soon and going to rebuild and bring peace and equality to all. Thank you, Merav.
Bye-bye.
Take care.